Hey folks, it's Marvin Cash, the host of The Articulate Fly, and we're back with another Casting Angles with Mac Brown. Mac, how are you?
I'm doing great. How you doing, Marvin?
I'm glad to be home. I've been traveling a lot, and I think you've been teaching a lot, right?
Yeah, it's been busy. It's been busy since the last month. We've been doing a lot of different little schools, casting schools and guide schools, and we're just now off this week getting caught up on emails and calls and all those other good things.
Yeah, it's funny. I think I told you before we started recording that not this weekend, but next weekend, my oldest son graduates from Chapel Hill, and when I come home from that weekend, I will have been home a grand total of 1 out of the last 6 weekends.
Wow, that's a big event. That's a big life-changing event too. So congratulations. And
yeah, I appreciate it. When you remember him, when he was talking junk to you when he was like 8 years old at the Raleigh fly fishing show.
Yeah, when he was just a little kid. Yeah, I do remember that. It's hard to believe he's graduating.
He's 22, dude. He'll be 23 in September.
Wow. They get big fast.
Yeah, they do. And, it's funny, right? We were talking before we started recording, and we always kind of folks wrestle with, what do we want to talk about? So we generally spend, I don't know, a good half hour catching up, brainstorming. And what we wanted to talk about, because, really, we're kind of in the sweet spot of, spring fly fishing and kind of our neck of the woods is basically efficiency. And that shows up in a lot of different ways. And, a really simple way to think about it is, if your fly's not in the water, you're not going to be catching fish. And so we kind of work everything in our process to, keep the bugs in the water as much as possible. Right, Mac Brown?
That's right. That's right. And that's what we spent a lot of time with the school last week, just talking about efficiency of movement, efficiency of drift, and trying to maximize how long is it in the water, how long are you fishing it, how much are you casting. As much as we teach casting on the road, everybody thinks we must like to cast a lot. And I would say that's so far from the truth. I think what you'll see is most people that like casting cast the least by far. And I think that's a good point to get across about this efficiency of movement during this podcast.
Yeah, I guess, we could probably start with just breaking down water. And, if you're fishing upstream, the general rule is fish close to far, back to front, right?
Yeah, and just learn to fish around all the, the clock faces around you. And the biggest thing we used to see in rec trips, which is what we don't want to see at this age, is people will be looking at something for whatever known reason, and they put it in, and it's not exactly where they wanted, and then they yank it. I used to call that the yank syndrome. So that's definitely not efficient. You put it in, then you make a big splash and pull it back out, and then put it in, you missed your spot again, and you yanked it back out. So the yank syndrome definitely needs to go. So let's address that first, because that's actually a really common problem when you're working folks.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, right? Because almost nothing good happens from doing that. You're better off to just kind of fish it out, because you're probably going to put down any fish that were there ripping your flies out, right?
Oh, yeah. And then they throw it back in and get close to the same spot they ripped it out. Now all those fish are 20 feet away anyway. So when you're sitting there watching it, you just shake your head and kind of wonder, like, what are we doing here? So you got to kind of get on that early if that's going on. But yeah, usually on the water, we try to do things where we get it, so much emphasis on casting over the years that really about line control, or what do we do once it's on the water? And that takes a lot. Really, I think line control is a lot tougher to teach than casting, to be honest. But what we try to do is optimize, like what Swisher and Richards talked about in selective trout back in 72 about the clock faces. Learn to work 12, 3, 6, 9 o'clock, all the way around you, wherever you're standing. And then to maximize the drift. And if you want to fish downstream, of course, that means we're going to fish probably a lot more line than what most people think. And then when we go upstream, let's say we're only casting 30 feet upstream, up and across, we're going to use a reach man, so we don't want the line sitting on top of the fish you're trying to catch. And then let's say we can let it go downstream 30 feet. So that's a 60-foot drift. You're never going to see on guide trips like rec anglers getting 60-foot drifts, because that's just not what they think of. But that's what they should be thinking of. So I think that's a good part of the podcast karma here tonight, is to try to talk about that efficiency. Why can't they get 60 feet? Because it's just not in their repertoire.
Yeah, and I think some of that, though, if you think about it, the longer you make your drift, I think it makes your casting more efficient, right? Because if you've got a long drift downstream of you, you're going to be pretty close to being tight to start your forward cast pretty much when you start lifting those flies.
Yeah, and then it's all one motion. There's no false casting. There's no anything. It's just throw. Then you can water load it. If you want to change angle and go further across stream, you can take the rod tip and swing it around back of you, so it's not straight downstream. It's, 9 feet or 10 foot, whatever length rod you're holding. But you can have it more lined up than to throw up and across. But that's just a single motion. It's not a false cast. It's just a single cast. I mean, it's one cycle. It's a forward cast. And so that's what we don't see enough of, over the years. And I just think that will really help people, because that's what we did when we floated during the school. And it fished one day on the Tuck. It fished pretty tough. We had a cold front come in. One day was the slowest day was when the cold front came in. It fished really good the cloudy days last week on several of the park streams. Nantahala. We fished Webster one day. Those all fished during the cloudy days incredibly well with just dry dropper. But yeah, when you're trying to reposition something, by doing it like what we're talking about, letting it go all the way downstream, now you got the water helping you make the next movement. It's not like a false cast at all. It's not a to and from for 5 or 10 times like a lot of people do on the river. I mean, if we took a video camera, even here, it's springtime, it's tourist season, the wreck anglers are out in force. But if we just maybe, I wouldn't do it because I'd get in trouble. But if we just drove up the river, Marvin, and filmed it and then posted it, you know how many friends would make? Just by talking about, look how much waving's going on here. I don't really understand why it still goes on as much today as when I was a 20-year-old kid. It's just, I guess that's what people think you do.
Yeah, I mean, it's easier. It makes it so much easier from an accuracy perspective, too, because if you're having problems with accuracy, I mean, I don't generally have my thumb on top, but if you have that straight line and you kind of bring it forward, and wherever you point with your thumb is, if you've got enough force, that's where that fly line's going to go.
Yeah, wherever you point it, it's should move it there as long as it's close to 180 to begin with. And but yeah, I mean, that came up a bunch this last week during the guide school, and just efficiency of movement, trying to use the least amount of movement to make something happen. And the more you do that, the more your flies in the water being fished. And of course, good things happen. Then fish are just a byproduct of better behavior, so that's why efficiency is a hard thing to really a tough topic, because there's not like a formula of efficiency except looking at data. The more time your fly's floating, the more fish, are going to fall. And it's like, it's hard to say, here's a formula like F equals MA for efficiency. Doesn't happen that way. So all that can happen is just say, Marvin, like if you were, working with one of your kids or something, is just tell them to quit false casting so much. That's the first big step.
Yeah, but I would say, when you've got that line downstream of you, back to your point, like you don't really need false casts to get more line out. Just slip some line, right? And the current's going to get you tight again, and then you can keep casting. And that's a way.
That's right.
And that's a way not to wave things around unnecessarily. And then I would say the other caveat is, if you're nymphing with an indicator, you're going to want to basically draw kind of a reverse, C loop, right? I always tell you can kind of find the people that nymph a lot in our part of the world because they generally have that kind of lob, right? And it's pretty accurate when you've got enough weight. But it's the exact same motion. It's just you need to have a little bit more of an open loop, so you kind of make a backward C on your forward cast.
That's right. And with the dry fly, you hear a lot of folks say they got to false cast a lot to dry their fly, and that's not true either. So let's talk about the C pickup, the up down pickup. If you add that in with the dry fly game, doesn't matter where the fly is. It's dry as soon as you move it in one cycle. Totally dry because it's moving through. When you do an up down or a circle C pickup, the fly's moving through as you go to make the cast. It's moving through at about 650 plus miles an hour. All the water's flung out in that one motion. You don't have to wave it to and from for 10 or 15 times to think it's dry, because it's dry in one. But most people don't do a circle pickup or an up down. So there is a better way. It's just that's something to throw in there with efficiency. If they did that, it's dry in one repetition.
Yeah, and then I would say too, to kind of start the day off with things in your favor, just gink the fly and then keep some of the silicone dust with you, right? Lots of different brand names.
And
that'll keep you going for a while. But yeah, the little circle pickup, which is really kind of like throwing a little bit of a roll cast and then picking your fly line up when it straightens out.
That's right.
And you want to talk to folks about what the up down cast is?
It's just like go up slow and come down fast, and then your rod tips low, and then go ahead and make your cycle, make your pickup. When you do that, it puts a little V shape traveling down the line towards the nail knot or however you tie the leader on. And of course, the fly has to come through that same shape, and then you're accelerating, the other direction. And of course, the water's all thrown right out of the fly. So we do it a lot with dry dropper too. And I mean, that's basically what we fished a lot last week during those cloudy days. Dry dropper's been phenomenal up here the last week, and it really has. I think this is probably the peak of it last week when it was cloudy, because we're looking at 80 plus degrees coming up. And I mean, even May, everybody talks about May. May's better if you're further north, Our season is really March and April is when it's at its best. And May will come, and it might be some 90-degree days in middle of May, and it's over. You know what I mean? The water starts getting warm. Then you got to start going early in the morning. But when we talk about May, the United States is a big place. And when you talk about that, it's really further up north. May's like getting in the peak. I mean, they're fishing hatches in Pennsylvania that we fished 6 weeks ago right now. So we're way further ahead being this far south in southern Appalachia, So our hatches will start coming to a close here in the next couple of weeks. Then we'll get terrestrial game.
Yeah, and I'll leave one more kind of casting tip to avoid the motorboat when you're dry fly fishing. And if you lift slowly on the pickup and wait until basically your line leader connection is off the water before you snap back, you won't get the motorboat. That's
right. Yeah, that's a good one too. It's just just thinking of that, those little things, thinking about, efficiency. I think it's good for the listeners to think about every action that they do on the water, like try to make it have some purpose and intent behind it, rather than falling back into a trap of habits that's, like put it down and yank it all. I mean, false cast it a bunch of times. All those things are working so much against folks that it's just good to bring that up, since it's still a really good time of year to be out the next couple months.
Yeah, and I would also say, last thing we'll say before we kind of move on to calendar and all that kind of good stuff is you don't have to do this all in one trip. Pick one part of it, incorporate it until you're comfortable with it, then add something else.
That's right. And build on it each time you go out. That's good advice.
Yeah. So you finished 2 schools. You're done speaking. So you don't have another school until September. So it's really the guide game and the fall, right?
Yeah, we've got really just the schools like September. There's casting schools. We're doing the school down in Mountain Home with Davey Watton in Mountain Home, Arkansas, wet fly school. But what else we got? We got a couple of schools here, October, November, 5-day schools. And that's pretty much it until show season starts again. So I'm kind of trying to think about where to go, have a little holiday, because I need a holiday, Marvin. I've been kind of burning the candle here the last 5 months. I'm gonna take off and go somewhere sometime in the next month. I'm not sure where yet. I'm kind of debating that, loading the truck up and getting everything working.
Yeah, well, and folks, if you have a suggestion for Mac, DM him on social media. And Mac, before I let you go, you want to let folks know where they can find you to book a guide trip or to get on the waiting list or sign up for one of the schools?
Yeah, the best place to either message me at Mac Brown Fly Fish, like Instagram or Facebook, or macbrownflyfish.com URL, and that'll take you to the link for the guide school, the 5-day schools. They're both cross-linked, and anything on one page you can find back and forth from that other Fly Fishing Guide School website as well. That's probably the best way.
Well, there you go. Well, folks, as I always say, you owe it to yourself to get out there and catch a few. Tight lines, everybody. Tight lines, Mac.
Tight lines, Marvin.